Okay, hello everyone, welcome to another episode. Tired, broken, and eternal. And I wanted to write eternally unknown, but I felt it has a better style if it's tired, broken, and eternal, more mythic value. But there is a distinction. Recently I was listening to an interview from Ayn Rand, and she is a Russian-American philosopher, and I learned one of the most profound things from her. That in some sense, as she says, man must not sacrifice himself for others and must not sacrifice others for himself. And in that statement from Ayn Rand, she was showing something to the species. That all our society, if it was stripped away from this point of using others for self and using self for others, if we find a sort of victory in this battle, we find a solution to this problem. Because the idea of the human value, for example, even if you look at the words tired, broken, and eternal, tired and broken refer to the known. It refers to the conditional. Eternity is an unconditional term. That means nobody says, I was eternal for a little while. You know, nobody says that. As if the person is saying, what are you? You're either eternal or you're temporary. Make up your mind, void. You know. We are containers of energy. We are energy that contains itself. As energetic creatures, we wonder, where should this energy go? And ultimately, it's as if we are a chemical and the world is a chemical, and how we engage it suggests the chemical reaction that takes place. That means if we were here to be in a world that was fully known, it would render the purpose of having legs and limbs and a body obsolete. That means the moment you know a world, you don't need a body anymore. Because why is there a body necessary? A body is here as a vehicle to, in some sense, take the person to where they haven't been before. Because if the person knew everything about the world, let's say we just had the universe, let's fathom it as finite for a second. That means the universe has an edge. That means this world we're seeing as the observable universe has an edge. And let's say it's like there is no unobservable universe. And so, just entertain this idea. And so, because we know everything in the visible world, there is no reason to be visible. We know it. Omniscience is another way of saying there's no longer a self in the room. Or the self is the room, is the whole room. So we, as energy containers, We require to use this energy, and we can use it in 2 outlets. That means every human being listening to me right now, your options in this world, really it comes to a square. And let me tell you why. Because there's 4 squares inside a square, imagine. That means you're looking at an old school window. You can either, first of all, let me say it this way. I feel there's 4 major, how do I say it? Pretty much these are the 4 angles I find all human beings are engaging. That means 8 billion creatures on this planet. I'm saying that all of them fit into this model. There are those who are engaged, occupied with the known self. And there are those who are occupied with the known world. And there are those who are occupied by the unknown world. For example, me, that's like what is fun for me about being alive, that it's as if there is so much yet we don't know, and so that literally fills the gap of what is the meaning of life. As if like a person in a dark room, what is the purpose of life? Turn on the light. And nobody knows when nature will take the microphone of conscious communication away. We are engaged with either knowing ourselves in an unknown world, knowing the world through an unknown self. Everything is explained in this model. The known self and the unknown self, one side, imagine they are the vertical dimension of the square, the known world and the unknown world, and the horizontal. So imagine a Cartesian plane, but just implement, instead of x and y as an axis, we have world and self as an axis. And so we can create a grid of what percentage of the person is known to themselves and what percentage it isn't. Imagine somebody was in an let's say altered state of consciousness. They went to a concert, they started partying, or something, and their state of mind was different. And now imagine something intense happened and something serious happened, and now the person is being asked, like, okay, what was your experience like of that altered state of mind? And the person says, oh man, it was a crazy trip. Like that's the language that we're using now. But in the future, if an advanced communicator was there and speaking to, let's say, an intoxicated person who had sobered up, the advanced communicator would say, what percentage of self did you know, did you not know? What percentage of your world felt to you known? What percentage felt unknown? And the reason I'm saying we give it a percentage, because we don't realize man has to strengthen his own hand by using it. What that means is if the human design is not used, it's like a candle that wasn't turned on. And imagine in the dark universe, we're candles. We have this intelligence that is our greatest strategy, our greatest technology to retaliate against this unknown in the middle of a world we've woken up in. There's too many people, I will tell you, on this planet who I would call them, they are the small big guys. And what that means is, there is something in human psychology. When a person is convinced they will never have something, they start acting. They start acting like they have it. The human psychology has its laments too, the laments of the mind. I've had moments where I would say I have cried for my mind, and my mind has cried for me. Can you imagine behaving in a certain way and your soul is scolding you? That means literally everything, all your memories go on pause, your body goes on pause, and for a moment you receive a signal, a feeling that comes from the inner sky, not the outer sky. The brain is a multidimensional airport. We don't realize it. We don't realize how many types of ideas, how many ways the brain has articulated itself so far, how many moments it has given shape to. The brain is the shape generator. The heart is, in some sense, what is allowing the shape for the brain to make shape. And what is life? You're a shape, the world changes. Oh my God, check this out. You are a shape, which is the idea of the self, and then the world is a shape, which is an idea, you are a shape, the world is a shape. If the shape of the world changes, your shape will change. If your shape changes, the shape of the world will change. And this, we have had too much evidence of it. You know, we've had too much evidence of human beings caring and the world becoming a better place. I mean, like, it's easy to be honest. You know, it's like there's a certain battle between the weakest memory and the strongest memory in your psyche, as if they're fighting. As if imagine every strong image of yourself you have in the content, the whole space of your mind. You know, they are an army. And imagine the most chaotic versions of yourself that you have experienced or you have fathomed, and the most ordered versions of yourself that you have experienced or fathomed, and they are like armies, and you're walking in the middle of these two armies. And these armies are waiting, and it's up to your decision which one you allow to charge at who. Because there was an incredible paradigm. I thought about, okay, let's say the George Orwell's 1984. Like, sometimes I can envision a civilization advancing in an order way, but there can be an advanced civilization that is chaotic. That means just because we require order now, because order is our advantage. It's like, hilariously, it's our comparative civilization's advantage. You know, to use order and to have language as a sophisticated technology that organizes the meaningless. But if it was a chaotic civilization, the implication of it would be different. You know why? That means, imagine the opposite of the world we're seeing now. Nobody has shown it properly. The opposite of the world now would be as if being chaotic is chaotic. That means what is the word good and bad? They're just on one level, they're mouth noises, it's a sound. On another level, it's a symbol, it's a subject. And pretty much human beings are in the game of world framing. We are framing, the brain is endlessly reinventing itself in accordance to every stimulus it has to process. And as it processes the stimulus, that means it's like, imagine things were happening. Imagine somebody, I don't know, dropped a cup of, I don't know, you know, their martini glass in front of you. And that would be stimulus. Like, that shock would be like, oh my God, you know, something, you know, somebody dropped, you know, their drink. There was a saying in this incredible Japanese show, and I may be going on from Ayn Rand to Japanese anime a bit too soon, but there was this show called Black Clover, and there was a character who was a captain in the show. And there was this kind of newbie, this new character in the storyline, and this captain gives this character the biggest life lesson, the biggest, most important. Like, literally, I was like, oh my God, this Japanese animation taught me something too, you know. And what it was this was the phrase that was ushered by a character named Vermilion. He says, being weak is nothing to be ashamed of. Staying weak is. That means being tired, being broken, being whatever. It's not that there's nothing wrong with being. But if you stay when you know there is something better, you have denied your own feet their greater journey. And then mirrors come and talk to you as I am now. That means if my talks have found you, you're a human being that it's time for your mind's life to activate. You must begin hearing a new kind of music in the world, a music that is not only interwoven in the destiny of an object, but into how subjects, it's as if they enter a room, they straighten their jacket and the work begins. So there's something. And humanity has to animate. We don't realize our words create the spirit of the moment because they give the contextual shape to the object of experience. That means we have been fooled. Let me tell you why. The concept is an object. The context is a subject. If the concept has to have its meaning based on the context, we are objects that can only know we're objects in a non-objective way. That means we are like an object, we're either an object that is hallucinating, it's a subject, and then it's going to come back to the truth that it was a meaningless object from the beginning. This is not recommended. Why? And materialism and secular society doesn't realize it, but subconsciously the hordes of people are being directed that way. Because if you feel life is meaningless, there's no reason to care for law. That means there's something strange that unless there is something more important than yourself, you won't care to be anything other than your innermost. This is why they say it's like when a person falls in love, they can't be themselves. It's like something has changed. Something is happening, not in a conditional framework, not in an expected framework. And many moments come and go, and life is always gifting you. I'm telling you, if you're smart, every day is like your birthday. You're like, every day I'm celebrating the birth of time, in the moment. So check this out. Now let me intensify this. If I say being tired and broken is okay, but staying tired and broken is not, now check this out. Being eternal is okay, but staying eternal is not. Why? Because there is a more to the more that we cannot fathom, even if it's more. People usually care for themselves, and if we are familiar to them, they, care for others. But I will tell you, so much of life it's just effort implementation and conscious application of whatever you are finding in your moment is not known. That means sometimes I don't feel like Darwin, he pointed that it's like the survival of the fittest. That means this creature wanted to stick around, it wanted to continue to exist, so it pushed on, and it had to even adjust to the environment to continue. What does that mean? That means this creature understood that it can't just follow its own inner realms. It has to be in alignment with the environment, or its body will stop existing in the outer realms. Now, to go to self, the comparison between self-sacrifice and world sacrifice. A very incredible distinction that could be made between the yogi and the religious mentality is that the religious person is in the game of sacrificing the self for the world. But the mystic has already sacrificed the self. Why? Because the mystic has understood your individual self is only individual because it's holding itself separate to the world. So technically it means our self is everything. And so now imagine, as a mystic, yourself is the world, and now you want to see beyond your world self. You know? That means the religious person wanted to go to a better room in the house. The mystic wanted to completely leave the house. This is why mystics are rare beings. They're like that that whale that came close to the water, you know, surface of the water. So, in the outer realms, specific energy management. In the inner realms, general energy observance. So I can tell you that behind your eyes, you're not a human being, you're being human. In front of your eyes, the human form is there, then you're being. So human beings, because we don't know which is the case, and all of philosophy has been this, the war between the analytical philosophers and the continental philosophers has been like a similar kind of war between the devas and the asuras. The devas were higher dimensional beings. They were pretty much timeless space. Now the asuras were embodied beings. And the Asurans were in some sense human, were an object being a subject. The Devas were a subject being an object. And now imagine a war between subjects and objects over an object wanting to be a subject in the same space. So what does that mean is, imagine the third dimension and the fourth dimension, they're both fighting over the second dimension. And the third dimension doesn't realize it has lost. That is the case. That means when dimensions come, that means I wrote the science fiction novel. There was the character I created called Lord Graviton. And I felt this character, I had never seen a superpower where the person can just instantly control gravity and everything. Just like, imagine a king with the power to wield gravity. And it's as if suddenly he made the world bow, you know? But then in the story, I created this next level mythological character, Lord Graviton. Then guess who comes? Lord Time. That means time comes and makes Lord Gravity bow. That means time moves its fingers, Lord Time, and Lord Graviton has no choice, imagine. You know, that means if the world doesn't go forth, gravity has no meaning. The continental philosophers, they are like the Devas. The analytical philosophers are the Asuras. It had to be like this, where in the outer realms, the analytical philosophers had to win. Why? The same explanation of why man had to make a mistake in the Abrahamic sense. That means if you are a religious person hearing this, let me tell you why you should have compassion for those who don't believe what you don't believe. And not pity, compassion, not like, oh, I'm going to heaven, others aren't. Like I will tell you, that's anything that feels like ignorance most likely is. And that is that the first mistake had to be made. That means I've wondered, what is this that the religious texts say? God is compassion, God is all forgiving in the monotheistic religions. And if God is all compassionate, and I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm saying if it is, why couldn't man be forgiven? That means if man made a mistake and God created man, why couldn't God forgive himself? That means God couldn't forgive himself, and in some sense, that which fell with man was that which fell with the archetype of God's minds that couldn't forgive. That means we are God's guilt from the religious angle, and from the secular angle, we are Mystery's dance moves. That means, I don't know, it's like Mystery's playing a video game, or like I'm giving this talk, you know. You know, there's this idea of, you know, I mean, this if you're a religious person, you know, I mean, hear me playfully, but if the person entertains the notion of an inventor, what does an inventor do? Let's say there was an inventor to the universe, not an agency, not a divine agency with a specific lockdown in history based on its image kind of personality. The inventor would create an invention, and then the inventor doesn't want the invention to, in some sense, be anything else other than what it is. Can you see? We are inventions of nature. And so the inventor creates, imagine you create a robot, I don't know, ego, and you test out this robot ego. And you see that this robot ego flies. Now imagine this robot, or let's say you make an android, you create an android, and instead of this android kind of being an android, now imagine the android wants to transcend itself. The inventor's like, oh my God, what did I create? A creation that doesn't want to be created. You know, because we feel creation is suffering because of our misinterpretation. We don't realize culture is hijacking our universal birthright to have mindsets so free you cannot set them anywhere. When will the sun shine from within? Find that sun. Find the warmth. It's like bask in the force of your life. It won't lead you astray. That is one thing. I have had many moments. I've been deceived by people. I've been deceived by friends. I've been deceived by family. But the worst deception has been when I have deceived. The moment's simplicity from all its probabilistic complexity. That means the biggest jewel I have found, the pearl I have found in a pearl of wisdom I have found in this realm, is that the future is not violent. And because it's not violent, to be violent means a quick exit. This world of ours is about to go into hyperspeed. Imagine, like as Buckminster Fuller, Marshall McLuhan said, we're on Spaceship Earth. This is Spaceship Earth right now. We're all crew members. We're all, humanity's crew. You know, And so we have to carry our weight. And to carry our weight, first we have to carry our weight. Individuals have to carry their weight to themselves. Then they got to carry their weight to others. Then they got to carry the weight of being a part of the human species. That means if in the future an extraterrestrial landed down on Earth and was like, hey, what are you guys? You got to be able to completely explain the effort of the human species. In the chat section, Sveta says, why do you think gods punish? Because they can't accept themselves. That is it. That means we are here. I mean, think about the religious angle. If everything is God's will, literally there's a term, I was born in Iran. And for those people who don't know, Iran is a country where church and state, or I should say mosque and state, are not separated. So what that means is the people are living in a cultural program that in some sense contextually hasn't updated since certain 6th century modes of thought, right? So this is important, the separation of church and state. Why? Because the separation is the salvation of both of them. That means when you mix religion and politics, oh my God, disgusting. When religion is on its own, okay, that's its own thing, that's its own moment, you know. And when you see politics, pure politics where our emotions about truth are not hindering our accurate analysis of the presence of the moment. Because you see, the most healthiest way, I feel that if I don't know if history has become my ally yet. But hopefully we will evolve and realize the idea of the body and mind, they have become old school. And the outer realms and the inner realms replaces that. And I feel if this little chess move, this tiny chess move, that means no longer you're judging a person, they're out of their mind, they're in their mind, the person's lost their mind, they found their mind. So all that shit goes away. And you see you are in the presence of the unknown. And that is what every child knows before language and ideas tell them what they are. You are freedom before you are not. And unconditional freedom, seek the soul that never left the room. As Alan Watts says, as the great Alan Watts says. Imagine going to sleep and never waking up. Now imagine waking up having never gone to sleep. That means we are standing in our future waiting for our past to finish its run. You are at the end of your marathon run. A Ionian marathon run, because energy has one home. And it is not the ideas of man. The ideas of man, they are just friends. I can tell you the best thing the mind can be is a friend. Yeah, be a friend to your mind, and your mind, which is the awareness, is the whole moment, who will be a friend to you. You will compassionately reverse engineer ignorance into unconditional clarity. You will wake up having never gone to sleep. And imagine from that state, an advanced civilization gets ushered in. Why? Because human beings are like, we have realized our infinite potential as finite beings. That means everybody should be super happy every day. Why? Because you can temporarily do everything, be everything, beyond culture. That means it was as if, like, let me tell you, in the movie Matrix, there was just one Matrix, right? They would just plug in the person's head into like one world. But and there was that weird room where the architect and the oracle were in. I mean, those rooms were different, but like. Through the legendary voice of Ayn Rand, we must find a strategy superior than self-sacrifice and world sacrifice. That means if we're having people sacrificing themselves for their world, that means they are being dismissed. That means it's like, that's not an advanced civilization. An advanced civilization literally means every observable phenomena advances. Everything. Nothing is left behind. Because everything is necessary, everything has had a karmic input. That means it's as if we're looking at the lines of code behind our eyes and the language that is giving stories to the sky. You know, yourself is the world, and your world is the self. And this is why, whether you sacrifice yourself or not, it is the same. But decency goes far, and civilizations rise when they notice how much they can fall. That means only when you're about to lose, you become a hero of your moment. But imagine you become a hero of a moment that can in any moment be lost. That means there was one thing I really appreciated from culture, at least a religious culture. Was a sort of solace, a solace, a sort of solace with the will of the universe. That means it's as if a person, if they make this world only up to them, you will feel like Atlas. You will feel like the whole weight of the world is on you. But if you realize you're a weight in the world, this energy must just extract as many angles it can until it finds the winning algorithm. And when you find the winning algorithm, you access and you tunnel through the moment. And when you tunnel through the moment, if you do not have the will to let go, that means a person cannot enter a portal if they don't want to leave the world they're in. Or I'll give you an example. Imagine the world is a room and in culture is an activity taking place in the room, and there's a door outside of this room, and there's people standing in front of this door, and they're like, I want transcendence, I want enlightenment, but I also want to like play in the room with everyone else. Do you know? And so this is why, this is really what the nature's filter of the true mystics, those who dared go beyond their humanism and those who had to stick in it. And it's not that you just do it because out of an ego. It's not just because somebody says something, you do something. In life, there's so many dimensions that the presence of your whole moment is your leader, really. Because that's the information you have to engage to respond. It's an interesting moment when you realize your mind is doing its own thing, and your body is doing its own thing, and the world is doing its own thing. And the only thing that is aware of everything being done is not a thing. Sight is not an object. You can't be like, a person can't be like, hey, can you just hold my sight for a second while I tie my shoes? It's like, you see, the sight, our sight is the abstracto permission of the realm. It's like we're an arbitrary force. That is the biggest mystery. That's the only reason like the word soul is still in the dictionary, I find, because we don't know what to make of the unknown. And the dictionary, I think at some point at the end of every definition of a word, it should be like, I don't know what to tell you. It's like who made the dictionary the god of the absolutism of the imagery of the realm? There's so much more. And you know how I know language isn't, not language, but you know how I know the languages we have currently? This is how I know the linguistic departments of all universities have so much work to do. Because the alphabet hasn't expanded. The letters in the alphabet, there should be new letters, there should be new alphabets, there should be endlessly different ways of articulating the realm from just pure abstraction emerging. Like there should be a lot of that, but it's not going on. Why? Because people are trying to fit into a world rather than realize they have a unique DNA, most likely to come and do something very unique, to play their part in history as the elements that they had occupied. That means literally we're all the periodic table reincarnating. It's like, astrophysicists believe in reincarnation, but for energy. It's like only energy gets to reincarnate. Because for me, I'll tell you, the concept of the soul is not lost in science. There's a gift. The word energy, that means a bunch of philosophers are going to eventually confront the scientific community. It's like, hey, explain this word. What does it mean, energy? It can't be created or destroyed. How do we even fathom that? That means the most important thing, that we say everything has energy, but we can't even fathom energy. Why? Because we are a creature that has been created, and we will, in some sense, the body is going to get destroyed. So what does that mean? That means it's temporary. Because we're temporary, that means we can only comprehend things in our measurement of where they began and where they end, right? So if energy can't be created or destroyed, how have we had the audacity to just call it energy? How can you fathom that which cannot be created or destroyed? And the reason is, the explanation is, you can never, it's like it's impossible to fathom the room, which is necessary to be before you can do. Okay. So Sveta in the chat section, I'm gonna read your comment because it's interesting. I'll turn off the music for a bit. So Sveta in the chat section says, if not for my child, I would go to extremes of my inner demands and make a huge spectacle out of my life, which feels like a calling. But what if that will damage my child, for example? And it's all my folly only. This is so scary. It's petrifying. Okay. First of all, you have to see your child as you. You have to care for your child as you, more than yourself, until that child can care for itself more than itself. So the idea is, that's literally like, it's like you have a phone application and you've opened an application on your phone and you're midway in that application. You got to finish that, get that application to a certain point. Then, right now, if you're wise, let me say, or if you want to be in a kind of like street smart, but in the streets of the ancient polymaths, what you do is you multitask. So what that means is you use everything in your moment as your inspiration. Okay. So Sveta says she's an adult. Okay. So God bless. It's okay. So I think it's just I mean, of course, keep those you care for close to you, and be able to be their better self in front of them. But when it comes to self, I mean, Sveta, I'll tell you, ask this question for yourself. I mean, just wonder about this. It's like a riddle. It's like you're here. It's like a creature has opened its eyes for a little while, and it has a certain energetic ability of expression. What does it do? That's the riddle. And if you and to answer this riddle, there are some people starting from the world first, like, oh my God, what does the world need? Instant assistance. Then some people are like, what do I need? Instant assistance. The distinction between greed and those who have understood why it's important to plant a seed. Nature is a cooperation. It's a symbiosis with our greater self. And I'm telling you, I'm just waiting for the fearless dimensions of the species to come out. Most likely they will. I will tell you, two things will happen. Imagine like advanced kind. This is so science fiction what I'm saying. But imagine and entertain as it. As the winds of evolution go forth, imagine two great forces will accompany the future. That means the future will have its own entourage, its own karmic forces assisting it. And I can see their badges. In other words, I could tell you the two allies. One is humor. That means that we don't realize how much meaningless stuff is going to happen on this planet, and our only way of getting through it is either going to the extreme irrationality or extreme rationality. Extreme rationality makes you heavy. Extreme irrationality makes you, oh my God, am I floating in the middle of nowhere? Both are required, and it's as if like the bird that has two wings and both wings need to synchronize. Now the body's life and the mind's life need to synchronize. And then the great work of the being will begin, and they will realize they are an instrument that their species is waiting to hear. Because there's so many ways to look at the world, you know. It's like the Western Enlightenment was like free yourself, you know, and the Eastern Enlightenment was like free the world from yourself. So Western Enlightenment, free yourself from the world. Eastern Enlightenment, free the world from yourself. That means the ancient yogis of the East, they became the conscious world. They were such mighty beings that what do you call it? There was a man named Sri Ramana Maharshi, and they asked him, "Who's your guru?" And he was an incredibly liberated human being. And they asked him, "Who's your guru?" And he said, "My guru is Arunachala." And somebody was like, "Who's that?" And he was like, "Arunachala is not a who. Arunachala was a mountain." That means this mountain enlightened this human being. That means he had found the heartbeat of the living universe in the moment. The heart of hearts, you know, as some poets have their roars have echoed. Individualism has to always go somewhere. If a person doesn't have, if a person does not find themselves in a state of mind in human civilization where they have conscious control over the speed of their life and a conscious control over the directions in their life, right? If these two are not there, we cannot even fathom liberty. How can an unfree being imagine freedom, fathom freedom? You know, imagine. This is going back to even Plato's allegory of the cave, which is saying, imagine a bunch of people were chained to the wall of a cave, and there was a fire, and there was shadows on the walls, and these people had never seen. These people had never seen the people in the cave have not seen themselves, so they see the shadows and they think the shadows are them. And Plato was, imagine a person gets freed from his shackles and then he goes and he sees there's the world outside. So that's the whole point, that could it be we are shackled, a dream is veiling the awakening. And could it be that as long as we have dreams, individual dreams, we forget the collective? And the only way it can be win-win is this. And this is one of the most important statements I think I can say in this lifetime. All individuals must care for the collective, and the collective must care for the individual. If this pattern, if this geometry gets implemented, I will tell you, our species can never be taken down. It would become like a Rocky movie of extinction, you know, where our species would keep being, you know, hit, but then it will realize, it's like, oh my God, my individualism is crumbling, and then it's like the leaf realizes it, the leaf plays its part, but the wisdom continues in the branch. And so you realize you are not over the soul, you are the oversoul. You are the universe, as Rumi says in Ecstatic Motion. You're the universe in ecstatic motion. You're a universe right now. You've just named a little part of it and you think that's you. You know? What does royalty mean? You know, something I realized, this was the notion. The death of honor. That means before God, as Friedrich Nietzsche, this German philosopher, he literally, this quote from Friedrich Nietzsche was a message in a bottle to the philosophers of the future generations. as if as if like Friedrich Nietzsche saw something messed up happen in a very deep conceptual angle of where society and civilization was heading, and he instead of making a Facebook status where the future generations could see the update, instead he shared this quote. Like, that was his genius strategy to pass down what was happening. And he said, God is dead and man killed him. God is dead and man killed him. And when I've thought about this sentence so many times, and I've thought about, wait a minute, what did man kill before God, and what is man gonna kill after God? This kind of deep idea. And let me tell you, what was the victim before God? Before Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead, one could have said honor is dead and man killed him. Honor was the previous victim. Okay. Now, God is, then Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead. Then I will tell you the next victim, which can never be defeated, because the next victim is the self, is the one who's victim. It's like the Punisher is being the Punisher. Is the next victim is the Punisher himself. The Punisher has come to a point where he has punished everyone except himself. So life will be like, okay, you have literally created a hell algorithm for yourself, right? So any human being, I mean, think about it. Let's say we say all the human actions throughout the lifetime of the individual human being is 100% actions. Okay, so 100% lived life is a life that had a beginning and an end. So all the actions done in the life would technically suggest that to be 100%. Now let's say out of the 100% of actions that a human being does, any kind of action, scratching their head, shouting at people, whatever, so whatever action the person does, what percentage of them, first of all, was giving and taking? Imagine in your life, if you have taken, you are more like a kind of that means you're leaving pretty much, it's as if the person who takes, they're telling the universe, take from me after I've taken from everyone. The person who's giving, he's like, give to me after I have given to everyone. Because giving is the only strategy. I don't understand, like, why else do we have inner realms to share them in the outer ones? Why do we have mouths to use them? We don't have mouths and voices to be introverts. We don't have voices to be shy. This was something where if I had a time machine and could go back, I would shout at myself. Hilariously, I said if I had a time machine, I would probably go back in time and just hit myself in the head, just slap myself in the head like, wake up, you silly kid, and then I'll go back into the future. And it's as if, can you imagine, like, the person, they're like, do you have a spirit guide? And the person's like, I don't know. And then, like, let's say some psychic revelation comes, and the person's like, no way, your spirit guide is laughter. It's like laughter is the guide of the confused, of the bewildered entity. Some people are like, Mr. Within, what did you just say? This world is a symphony, and when you accept the instrument that you are, then you can play it. And when you start playing it, keep it 50% unknown, 50% known. That way your future will be a gift to the efforts of your past. Rather than your future being the punishment of a past that didn't know, that couldn't do something better, Let me tell you, an advanced civilization can hilariously happen. It can happen super easily. It's like there was this person, he goes to the doctor and he says, doctor, my whole body hurts. And the doctor's like, what? What does that even mean? Like, the doctor's like, your whole body hurts, but how are you standing? Like, how are you moving right now? And the person's like, doctor, see, I touch my knee, it hurts. I touch my shoulder, it hurts. I touch my face, it hurts. I touch my stomach, it hurts. And the doctor looks at this, and the doctor's like, buddy, your finger's broken. Do you see the power of humor? Do you know, it could see the suffering of the world and be like, okay, you know, it's like let's move on, you know. That's the power. I'm telling you, those people who can wield the spirit, or let me say it more mythologically. Let me create a sort of neo-modern mythos. Let's say all the people on this planet, and of course I don't have their eyes. Like this is something outside of my element, but but I'll tell you this: it's as if all those people who are comedians on this planet, it's as if the spirit of humor has chosen them as a force. Do you know? And imagine all those people were, for example, engineers. Do you know? The spirit of the intellect, the spirit of that has chosen. That means we're wielding different forces to build a civilization that is no longer forced to break itself, and it is building itself, it is advancing. That means, can you imagine a civilization that is updating quicker than it's making a mistake? That means, let's say, in human life, as human beings are being born, it's like mistakes are happening, and efficient actions and inefficient actions and efficient actions are taking place, right? So out of all these, if we could increase the percentage of efficient behavior on the planet, you know, if we could tilt the table, and they'll be like, oh my God, our dinner, you know. Broken fingers, tired souls in the void, wondering what we do with the space-time continuum. You know, human beings endlessly in the theatrics of their own evolutionary narratives. It is incredible. It is incredible when you realize that your greater self is waiting. I'm telling you, there has, like, literally, if it's like, let's say the person, they were in the, they found themselves in a divine moment. They suddenly entered a divine moment out of nowhere. You know, they entered a divine room. And in that divine room, suddenly there arose two, let's say, giant avatars of light. Okay? And one of these avatars of light was your past. And it had the color yellow, imagine, like the sun's light, you know, your past. So imagine two lights emerge in front of you in this divine room, and then one of them is glowing yellow, glowing, you know, fiery, and the other is glowing blue, light blue. Okay, so just blue, a blue glow and a yellow glow or golden glow, you know. And so the golden glow is the spirit of your past. This means this was not per se the notion of the spirit guide, but it was the intelligent space that your body went through its jurisdiction. So what I mean by that is that your past is an energetic co-creation of multiple dimensions. The mind, that means right now I'm speaking, I am not the, you know, I am not the only intelligence in this room of space and time. It's like the person had such an ego, he felt he was God, but then he was looking for God. It's like, it's like God is looking for God and man doesn't know what to do. And guys, I'm sitting here just sharing my views. The way I communicate is that I consider in the future we're going to care so much about everything that we are being. The wind pushes the visible in a way that we can't see. And so being a human being in this world is like being a leaf that while you're alive, that you can feel the winds of evolution, you can feel the wind moving. But the moment your life completes, your mind, your mind, you witness your mind into its completion, and then presence is the only thing present. That means the great samadhi, to realize you are the room, and because you are the room, there is nothing to take when you are everything, in that absolutist angle. And the other ally of the future is geometry. The spirit of humor and geometry will in some sense be part of the entourage of the future generations. You know, it's like right now I'm a pilot. We all are technically, but we don't realize it. So I'm saying start as an advanced communicator and then you become a pilot in realizing history is meant to be lived. Ayn Rand, in one of her ideas, she mentioned that children know, she sees children, young children, as the ideal way where human beings should behave in society. Right? This was her view, right? My view is a bit different. But she meant that means children, they don't hold back, they don't lie, they are just moment of truth before too many ideas. This sort of create self-fragmentation. This song is totally taking me somewhere else in my inner world. It's like, let's say the universe doesn't know, it's like the small and the big means the small is not oblivious to the big, but the big is oblivious to the small. That means we are what is going on behind God's eyes. Because if the world is treated as void, seriously, if we treat it as an empty room right now, okay, where we're on a sphere just hovering mid-air, okay, so imagine you were like, let's say back in the day you were like, I don't know, Gandalf's like I don't know, childhood friend or something, you know, and so Gandalf had taught you how to like raise a sphere, you know, like how to raise a boulder into the air. So let's say you see a boulder that has a bunch of ants on it, and you raise this boulder, you levitate it into the air, and what happens? Or let's say Gandalf's future self, Yoda, you know, you know. Anyways, those ants are on the sphere, and what choice do those ants have? Those ants, just hovering on a sphere in mid-air, have to build their life on the sphere to have enough trust to go way beyond the atmosphere. And imagine if atmosphere was spelled A-T-O-M-S, A-T-O-M-S, atomos, like the word atomos, the word atom, and then fear, the fear of the atom, you know. That means it's like, don't fear going beyond atmospheres and don't fear atom spheres. Language is out of control in 2020, you know. You know, people are trying to be good boys and good girls to themselves. When they realize how much bigger the world is than themselves, you will understand why I'm sitting here talking about an advanced civilization. Because the thing is, imagine it took you like a lifetime. Let's say it takes someone 80 years. There was the Sufi story, a man at the age of 70, he dies, and he was living a very good life, and he dies, and then he realizes, no way, I was alive. Like when he dies, he realizes what life was, what its true value was. It wasn't just an arbitrary sleep in language while the world just happens multidimensionally and we ignore it. We have to be the liberators of those who need liberation in the first place. So I'm gonna go into a quote tunnel now. And anything, guys, because when I speak, it's as if like I'm a squirrel running on a branch, and when I'm running on this branch, I can't choose to run on all branches at the same time, so I kind of, you know, the geometry of the speed of what I'm saying can be non-linear. So if people want to know more about something I said and maybe I didn't paint the picture fully, you can write in the chat section. Yeah. So Ayn Rand quotes and a quote tunnel. We're going to see how Ayn Rand's eyes opened the world. And by the way, anybody listening, I apologize for if the coughs are too loud suddenly and you're listening with earphones. But think of it as if we're in the middle of a battlefield. I'm giving this talk. In the trenches of human civilization, are we willing to go beyond these linguistic trenches and actually step into the unknown and usher in the advance? That means it's not that people are just waiting for an advanced civilization, and the advanced civilization is waiting for you to realize now or never. Into the Ayn Rand quote tunnel we go. Ayn Rand says, the smallest minority on earth is the individual. Those who deny individual rights cannot claim to be defenders of minorities. Ayn Rand says the question isn't who is going to let me, it's who is going to stop me. Ayn Rand says a creative man is motivated by the desire to achieve, not by the desire to beat others. Yeah, because that's a waste of time. Every moment, like all those people, let's say, who are being violent and thug-like, you're wasting your time. It's like, use that same amount of energy, but just for a different approach for your inner realms. You'll be fascinated, you can literally be super angry, and instead of letting that anger go in your outer realms, you can literally change its direction like a airbender or a firebender, That means like in your inner realms, you got angry, rage. It's like suddenly the blind warrior is about to step out, and instantly, as if like your conscience, like a general, comes and grabs that blind warrior and, slams him to the ground until he comes to his senses. Ayn Rand says, achievement of your happiness is the only moral purpose of your life. And that happiness, not pain or mindless self-indulgence, is the proof of your moral integrity, since it is the proof and the result of your loyalty to the achievement of your values. And I'll just add more of a global context here. Ayn Rand she is saying, if you care for your happiness, but not just the happiness like you've been, you saw in a bus advertising once, a happiness that is you as a human being being like, I'm here for a little while. What does this mean? What is this? What is the effort? It's like, why are we batteries right now? What should this battery be used for? And this is where the idea of your happiness is a supreme ideal. Because did you know that a majority out of 8 billion human beings, I would say, I think this may be an accurate thing, but I think 40%, I could be getting the measurements in reverse, but 40% of human beings, I feel, don't, maybe more, maybe way more, maybe a majority of human beings don't feel they deserve happiness, because the society is a cruel, not cruel, but it's a rough system, and so your inner constitution is adjusting to the reality of the outer realms. If we were right now immortals, just for a moment, think as if nobody died. There would be literally war would stop, because we'd be like, okay, it makes no sense. We can endlessly fight till the end of time. So the only thing left for an immortal society, a society of immortals, a civilization for at least an immortal idea of the human being. But immortals wouldn't compete. They would integratively try to see how their unknown angles will lead to the greater novelty. Because there's a responsibility. That means if right now there came some power, some strange power from the sky, and that this power from the sky said, choose, would you want immortality or mortality? Now. And the person had no time to think, no time, not a second. right? You had to just instantly be like mortality or immortality. You had to choose. I would say most people would probably just say nothing. They wouldn't know what to say. I think very few people, I think less than 1% of the population would say immortality. Because very few beings can be responsible for their future. And I don't mean future as in like in just planning. In the future of your intelligence, which surpasses the temporary human candle that I'm speaking to you right now. We're in the candle dimension. Everybody's glowing with hope. Yeah. Ayn Rand says reason is not automatic. Those who deny it cannot be conquered by it. Do not count on them. Leave them alone. Ayn Rand says we are first approaching the stage of the ultimate inversion, the stage where the government is free to do anything it pleases, while the citizens may act only by permission, which is the stage of the darkest periods of human history, the stage of rule by brute force. We need to multidimensionalize and everything would be okay. Ayn Rand says contradictions do not exist. Whenever you think you're facing a contradiction, check your premises. You will find that one of them is wrong. Ayn Rand says, the ladder of success is best climbed by stepping on the rungs of opportunity. Ayn Rand says to say I love you, one must first be able to say the I. Ayn Rand says money is a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but it will not replace you as the driver. Ayn Rand says the truth is not for all men, but only for those who seek it. I don't know if the ladder of success is best climbed by the stepping on the rungs of opportunity. Ayn Rand says there's a level of cowardice lower than that of the conformist, the fashionable nonconformist. Yeah, because ultimately language goes only so far, then it's like actions. They say actions speak louder than words. Why? Because when you see the action, you don't need words. This is why the philosopher remains silent when the mystic speaks. Through silence. Because the notion can be even said, the philosopher in some sense can never be a philosopher. That's the only, philosophy is the only domain of human thought, the only arena of human contemplation where the contemplator in some sense gives itself the permission to contemplate beyond itself. Right? But then that beyond has to be standardized because the educational systems have to teach something. Oh my God. Instead of educational systems being like, okay, you're the new recruits of the human advancement effort, so here's the global problem, solve them. That would be a great teacher in my view. A teacher that releases a giant a giant that everybody knows that is there in the world. And so suddenly it becomes like 8 billion ninjas, you know, or 8 billion samurai, with the honor that their future, it has a value, and so does them. It would be like the Neo Samurai, that the sword will become a sort of hologram sword, and the samurai would do harakiri, but nothing would happen. It's just a hologram sword. But the honor performance would be there. You know, a performance of honor would be kept. Excuse me. Ayn Rand says civilization is the progress toward a society of privacy. The savage's whole existence is public, ruled by the laws of his tribe. Civilization is the process of setting man free from men. And yes, that means I feel like she's literally saying you have to make every human being realize they are themselves, so the environment doesn't move them. Because if the environment is justifying your value, you have not evolved. Because back in the day when we were in the force, we were responding, reacting to just, you know, the stimulus of the environment. Now we have grown, and if now we have, after, you know, what is it, like 250,000 years, civilizations around 100,000 years. Even historians are like, yo, who wrote this, you know? His story is incomprehensible. That's why art has a huge voice. Anyways, be free so the world can be more free. That means you free the world by freeing yourself. So first you free yourself free the world from yourself. Either way, two crossroads. You free the world from yourself, then free yourself from the world, or you free yourself from the world and you free the world from yourself. This is important because this means freeing the world from yourself means you don't have a you are not addicted. You I don't know how to finish the metaphor, but I feel the imagery is too abstract. But anyways, back to the quote tunnel. Ayn Rand says the hardest thing to explain is the glaringly evident which everybody had decided not to see. The hardest thing to explain is the glaringly evident which everybody had decided not to see. Ayn Rand says happiness is the state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's values. Yeah, that means you have a value system. They call this, I think it was Emil Durkheim, the sociologist. He came with, what he called it? Structural functionalism. Or functioning structures of structuralism. Pretty much the system has a structure and we're functioning in it. Now what Ayn Rand, she's pointing out here incredibly, is she's saying you have a value system, and in this value system, this system has a structure. So the structure you give to what the world means to you, before you give a world a structure to function in, that's where happiness is. Ayn Rand is saying, she's saying. To emphasize, Ayn Rand says the worst guilt is to accept an unearned guilt. The worst guilt is to accept an unearned guilt, yeah. Ayn Rand says wealth is the product of man's capacity to think. Ayn Rand says individual rights are not subject to public vote. A majority has no right to vote away the rights of a minority. The political function of rights is precisely to protect minorities from oppression by majorities, and the smallest minority on earth is the individual. Wow, 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 wow. What an incredible way of terming it. The smallest minority on earth is the individual. That means if we don't care for, check this out, individual human rights, everything else is arbitrary. Everything else is being arbitrarily kept. It is only the human that is truly here, right? That means it's as if life sensitivity, that's a pillar of civilization. Nature, it's like we don't want to turn into robots now. And we have the big challenge of, they say like in 2050, some futurists say there's going to be a technological singularity where technology updates quicker than we can keep up with it. Ayn Rand says there are two sides to every issue. One side is right and the other is wrong, but the middle is always evil. The middle is always evil. It can't be possible. The middle is the right or wrong. That means the middle can't be one of the sides. It's as if we can't say the middle of the coin is one side, we can't say the middle of the coin is heads or tails. But Ayn Rand here is saying like the middle of the coin is heads, you know, or evil, animalistic despair that as a retaliation to its inner self-conceived anguish hurts the world. And that means those are certain forces that some advanced communicators might, you know, in the future they may see, right? The idea is we don't fear order, we don't fear chaos. We, like a bird, synchronize. Anything chaotic happens, we learn from the chaos as it is. We learn from the chaos in accordance to the order we know. We learn from the chaos in accordance to the future orders we can extract from it. Same thing with chaos. Literally the algorithm, vice versa, as if the mind is like as Rumi really shares this imagery. He says the mind is like a bird's wings where it needs chaos and order to fly. Your intelligence needs known and unknown variables to be animate. If it was 100% known, there would be no unknown. If it was 100% unknown, there would be no known. And this is why the yin-yang symbol, people don't realize it, is one of the most incredible maps of the unconscious. That means I don't know if Carl Jung noticed this. You know, or maybe it wasn't, history had different plans for his eyes, but where else can we, as 8 billion human beings, have an honor? I mean, it is true, we're like, oh man, in the future we're not going to be around. But while we are here now, the performance, as if suddenly we realize, it's like I see it in my inner realms, but it surpasses based on decisions made, I don't know, maybe like in 120 years now, there would only be one type of culture, and people would be like, what does that mean? What do you mean, what kind of culture? And I'll be like, one kind of culture, the celebration culture. A culture that is advancing. We have tilted the odds again, where too many our victories are more than our defeats as a species. So we start celebrating. It's literally, we tune into the smart strategy. As they say, like in Sun Tzu Art of War, they say there's like the generals back in the day, there were metaphysical generals that had entertained a metaphysical war, right? Sun Tzu would say the general that has like balance between heaven and earth finds the balance between heaven and earth wins. That means it's as if any big event, there is, let's say, just to, I don't know, animate it, I don't know, to throw steak for the theosophical community. In any giant event of minds, there is a greater audience of minds. That means, imagine three-dimensional beings don't care what two-dimensional beings do, but when two-dimensional beings are talking about three-dimensional beings or trying to become three-dimensional beings, then the three-dimensional beings start really looking. Right? So it's this thing that when man cares for his own advancement, that type of universe starts appearing. The gods will thank us for how our simple decency conquered the complexity of how the cruelty of the world's retaliation can only be through living consciously. That is the greatest artwork, the great painting every person must attempt to draw. A conscious life in the canvas of the void. That means be living poetry, as Rumi says. Be living artwork. That means, do you know what that means? I'm a person who I've written a lot of poems in my life. And let me tell you, when Rumi said be living poetry, that was like as if the pen, like snow, evaporated, just melted away in my hand. I realized that's the true art. True art is not the object-based relationship or the subject-based relationship. It is the direct experiential acceptance of being. It is literally learning to not live in a universe, to live with the universe, and then to live as the universe, and then the universe sees beyond itself the moment you are it. Just like we're a self and there's an additional observing dimension, right? So we're saying like our body is in the space of our mind, but our mind was required to create even the word or concept or localization or classification of the view of the body. And so perhaps I have to maybe declare, this is going to be my last talk for a while, guys. I have reached the point where my unknown, that means the unknown cause. That means it's as if right now I'm speaking and communicating to other human beings in the observable universe. Now, the unobservable universe is calling. So when the unobservable universe calls, you start living in pure wonder. That's the not safe haven, but that is the way you step into the pure land. You accept your past, and then the past is like, oh my God, did my shackles just break? And the past runs into its own freedom. Then the person accepts their present. And when you accept the present, you have accepted the future's potential, but you haven't accepted the future yet. And the past was freed, so technically when you come to the present, when the past is freed, there is only the present and the future. This was a view wherein, for example, again, in certain Eastern schools of thought, there was no hell. It was just earth and heaven. It's as if they didn't have time to create hell, a hell for themselves. It was just earth, heaven, a relationship of matter and space. And not to fear this, but to comprehend it and to honor the vitality of the living being. That means if you're a candle, if let's say you're someone, here's the thing, a person has to train caring for their own mind before they can care for the mind of others. This is very important. I'm going to read a few more Ayn Rand quotes actually. My eye caught one. Ayn Rand says, the man who lets a leader prescribe his course is a wreck being towed towards the scrap heap. Yeah, that means, as Leo Tolstoy shouted, bethink yourselves. Ayn Rand says every man builds his world in his own image. He has the power to choose, but no power to escape the necessity of choice. Ayn Rand says, run for your life from any man who tells you that money is evil. That sentence is the leper's bell of an approaching looter. Ayn Rand says, achieving life is not the equivalent of avoiding death. Ayn Rand says, force and mind are opposites. Morality ends where a gun begins. Wow, what a sentence. Ayn Rand says, if any civilization is to survive, it is the morality of altruism that men have to reject. Okay, let me tell you why she's saying that. Because ideological worship was out of control, right? That means Ayn Rand and a lot of philosophers were like that, right? They couldn't see us stepping out of the language simulation. They couldn't see us discriminating between our inner realms and outer realms. So this is why saying morality of altruism has to be rejected. Why? Because in a world of blind, let's say everybody has blindfolds, or in a world where everybody has a box in their head, what sort of goodness are we working towards? That means before we can take the box off our head, the ideological obsessionism, and then there comes the breath of a new world. Ayn Rand says the purpose of morality is to teach you not to suffer and die, but to enjoy yourself and live. And last but not least, Ayn Rand says, ask yourself whether the dream of heaven and greatness should be waiting for us in our graves, or whether it should be ours here and now and on this earth. That means now the brush is in your hand. Now there is an intelligence in the space-time continuum you can pilot. Now you are here. And can you feel at the outskirts of the edges of your memory and your memories of the past and visualizations of the future, can you feel the unknown? Can you feel as if this giant breeze, this wind that is hitting our civilization, and these candles that are glowing, and even though like the candle wax is melting, but the wind is also blowing the candle. Do you know? And so now these candles are like, okay, time to build a headquarters. Time to plant the flag of human civilization in the void, but an advanced one. For the first prototype gave us a great understanding of the realm, but it is not our proper shoes where the species needs to walk in. You know, there's the multidimensional renaissance hasn't taken place. In the future, they will be shocked how little we saw of how much we could have seen. This quote from Ayn Rand has become my favorite quote. I just wrote a sentence, I think it's worth sharing. From ugly beauty to kind collectivity. And if man is kind to himself, at least you were nice to one human being. At least you could, the person's like, imagine the person did something good for themselves, but not to the loss of others, let's say to the advancement of others. And imagine the person finds themselves, a philosopher finds himself at the pearly gates, and the voice says, you have, and the philosopher's like, why isn't the door opening? And then imagine the voice at the pearly gates says, how do you know? Maybe the door is open, maybe the door isn't. And the philosopher's like, you bastard. But I'm saying that, and I'll shape it the way I want to actually say. The philosopher is looking at the pearly gates, and the voice says, you have done nothing good. You don't get to enter heaven. The philosopher says, I got a bunch of questions. The philosopher says, if I don't deserve to go into heaven, why am I standing in front of the gate? I probably have some percentage of deservance. Then the person, this is a hypothetical story, guys, I'm totally saying. Now, then the person says, the philosopher says, that's not true, I have done nothing good. I have done good to one human being. That means those people who, at least, here's the lowest form is you don't care for yourself and you don't care for others. Then the next lowest form is like you don't care for yourself, you care for others. Then the next lowest form is you care for yourself, but you don't care for others. Then you care for yourself and you care for others. Then welcome to humanity. Welcome to where the true pilot's cabin. And you know what's hilarious? Nobody can be free. That sentence doesn't make sense. And imagine, just to finish off that past image, the voice of the pearly gates is like, oh man, this philosopher's right. He was kind to himself, but because he saw himself separate from others at the same time. So then then what the voice of the pearly gates does is he says, you get to stand like right outside of the gate of heaven, but right outside of the gate of heaven, inside heaven. Oh man, languages, of course. Some say that could be the true food of the gods. Anyways, let me see, subtitle, yeah, I'm gonna say something about self-sacrifice. First of all, hopefully by now, those people who are regular listeners, you have a sense where you're not limited to judging things only from duality. Now you're looking at things from their relationship with the number 0, the void space, with number 1, which is the singular space, So, I don't know, one space as one word. And then we have duality, right? So in duality, that's where all of people's judgment, that means any person who ever can criticize another person, that's only in duality. Nobody can judge oneness. Nobody can judge the void. Nobody can, the void and oneness truly are untouchable. That means if a person is even saying, I am oneness right now, that person has not understood oneness doesn't have a voice. Oneness is. But the sun has emanations regardless. So then the person has an analysis of infinity. So 0, 1 to infinity. This is my personal model, my a sort of philosophical lens I've painted over the world. And the infinite dimension is man's relationship with his ultimate potential. And that's what the advanced civilization is trying to tap into. The advanced civilization is like this giant art project, and human beings are like, why should I care for this art project? And then they realize this art project is the only art project. That means literally all people were told, hey, it's like the future is here behind our eyes. Let's bring it out. Let us open the doors to a future that could never fail. That's what you call truly being smooth, You sacrifice yourself for the world. Still, energy is energy. You sacrifice the world for yourself, energy is energy. Ultimately, we're just looking for the efficient opportunity. That means, let's say, even like somebody wanted to, let's say the world in the future was blinded by this dogmatic movement called coolism. Coolism. Coolism, and people no longer were thinking rationally or even irrationally. They were just looking at what was cool to them. You know, whatever that abstract meant. It's as if there would be cool philosophers, right? Literally coolest philosophers. You know, people would be like, these philosophers are the coolest, you know, the coolest. This philosopher is the coolest, you know, but spelled again, C-O-O-L-I-S-T. And then imagine a cultural movement comes called, like, you know, so coolism. This is not just cool, it's so cool. Like, it's ultimately cool, you know. Can you imagine, you know? It's like the reality. We just have to care. We just have to first ask, what do our eyes deserve? What do our greatest, advanced, most potential archetype of self deserve? That means, what does the greatest idea of you deserve? What is the greatest, what do the greatest eyes, what do your greatest eyes deserve? Then what does the greatest eyes of the potential of your civilization deserve? That means, what does the ability of your civilization deserve? Who cares whatever story is being painted in this decade? You know, every generation, when you look at history, you're like, oh my god, it's like film after film after film after film and film, and people feel truth is just what they see in that film. You know, we're actors in our own dreams, not realizing that those who are awakened, the dream has awakened from its own dream. That means the dream is dreaming, that therefore awakening is in the room before. So we care for, it's literally a win-win strategy. That means this is the true people, this is the true definition of smart. I would only allow this definition for the word smart, where you win and your world wins, and then nobody can lose. Do you see the ultimate victory we achieve? If we just act a bit more civilized, if we realize it takes effort to be a human being, and it takes so much effort to be a conscious human being in a system with endless variables that can push you into unconsciousness. So there is an elegance. Like, after the person has found linguistic truth, it's like, right, it's like, when are you going to get tired of reading? All those people looking for just linguistic truth. You're going to get tired of reading at some point. Then you're going to put the book down. Then you're going to look at an endless sky, and then the real questions of your life. Well, I call it the great unknown questions of the realm walk towards you. That means, imagine the spirit of when the spirit of the unknown becomes your ally. That means you have realized your spirit is unknown, and the unknown cannot be unfree. Therefore, rendered uber freedom, ultra freedom. That is the level of, like, there was this idea of ultra instinct in this Japanese show. And so this is ultra freedom, a freedom that is prior to thinking, prior to instinct even. That is true being. And when one doesn't fear, imagine this, imagine you don't fear being an individual temporary being, you instantly give yourself an ability to not fear being the opposite of that. That means if the afterlife was a coin flip of eternal sight or not, the free are free before they need to be. That's the walk of, that's how the future walks and the past dreams. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and for those who care about, you know, the sun in the sky, you know, the reflection of the sun in the ocean, and they just, you know, they care for life. Please care for my Patreon too. No, and namaste. And one last thing. Again, I'll repeat. There's nothing wrong with being tired, broken, and eternal. But staying tired and broken and eternal is a shame. That means, yeah, that was that actually. So don't let shame touch you. I don't know. Everything is a memory. How we choose to behave suggests the memory. That means all these moments where I'm, for example, I'm a smoker at the moment. So when I'm creating endless memories of for myself that I'm smoking in. So at some point I gotta even renounce the mindscape. But anyways, and I would say this one last thing. Recently, guys, YouTube has opened this kind of membership. This membership thing. And I have no idea what I'm going to do with the channel. So just think of it as if like the pilot, this is the last flight for now. And until I figure out what I'm going to do with a voice that's just being. Namaste. Thank you for listening. And rise, mankind, rise.